Welcome everybody. Today we have with us once again Swami, Srimat Swami Chidekanandaji Maharaj ji, production editor Prabuddha Bharata, Advaita Ashram, Ramakrishna Mission, Kolkata, India. And last time we were mesmerized by his lecture of various facets of Ramakrishna Leela and how the places associated with Sri Ramakrishna he has shown graphically and recalled our memory. Those of us visited Belur, those of us visited Dakshineshwar and other places associated with Sri Ramakrishna. We enjoyed it very much. Today, the topic of his lecture is Sri Ramakrishna and the practical application of the growth mindset. As long as I live, so long as I learn. A concept of education of Sri Ramakrishna. So it will be a great uh, opportunity for us, what we really understand from Sri Ramakrishna, what he understood by learning, how do we learn, and our minister in charge, Udanaji, will kindly speak a few words. Before that, Attorney Jena will introduce the topic to our Filipino audience so that they can better internalize today's topic. And then our Maharaji, our spiritual advisor, will speak. Attorney Jana.
Thank you, Nirmal Babu. Magandang hapon po sa lahat na sumusubaybay sa talk series na hatid po ng Ramakrishna Vedanta Society Philippines. Nalulugod po kami na i-welcome muli. So, I just said that we are very fortunate to have with us again, once more, Srimat Swami Chidekanandaji, Maharaj, for us to be enlightened with this topic, Sri Ramakrishna, and the practical application of the growth mindset. As long as I live, so long as I learn. So, we are all delighted. We are also excited to learn from him this topic. And I now turn over to Father Swami Udayanandaji. Thank you.
Maharaji, Udanandaji, kindly, mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Nirmal. Thank you, Jana, Attorney Jana. I, on the behalf of Ramakrishna Vedanta Society of the Philippines, welcome you all. We have heard Swami Chidekanandaji before, and that interaction was greatly appreciated by many people. We got a very positive reviews, very positive response. I hope today also it will be a great talk only, and you will get many things out of it. You see, life is all about learning. It is not about coping with some crisis or not. It is more than that. It is growing, learning and growing. That is what Sri Ramakrishna also preached. Javad Vachi Tavat Siti. As long as I live, I learn. So I hope that you will continue and you will get benefit out of this and continue this endeavor to learn as long as possible, as much as possible, in as many fields as possible. Religion also, there is so many things to learn. You see, we lose faith in religion because we don't get benefit out of it. Many people, today only one person was talking to me and he was asking, what is the use of being religious? We are the same people what we were few years before. After getting initiation and doing all this, what changes have come? Nothing. My status is same, my lifestyle is same. Yes, that is the thing. What will change? How these classes are helping, that we have to realize. So, I hope we will come to that also once, that how we should modify our life according to the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. So today also our session is related to that, what Sri Ramakrishna said about learning. So I hope you will enjoy and learn, and if there are questions, there should be questions. I hope you will come up with questions. Questions are very good because question helps the speaker also. Once that interactive session is there, it will inspire the speaker to come out with better and better and better. You will get better out of him if you just ask questions. So I hope this will be an interactive session, and at the end of the session, people will feel that there are many takeouts to be taken away. Thank you very much, all of you, for kindly joining. And with this, and we are very grateful to Swami Chidekanandaji for accepting our request and giving a talk for the second time. Thank you very much, Maharaj. In spite of your busy schedule, you could spare the time. We are really very grateful to you. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Now the mic is yours. Thank you once again. Thank you. And one more thing, Maharaj wanted to see the faces of the people. So I would humbly request as much as Stephen and all others, if they show their faces, then it will be better for him to interact and he knows what he is talking all about. Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tvayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Namaste Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Pranams Maharaj and Namaste everybody. It's I feel it's my great joy and great honor to be back to see you. And let me start by saying that I think that this concept, what Maharaj said and what Sri Ramakrishna said, Javat Bachi Tavat Shiki. So long I live, as long I live, so long I learn. So actually, it's for about 6 or 7 years, and I think this year I'm going to do it. I've been wanting to write an article on this, an article which compares modern psychology, modern theories of education with Sri Ramakrishna's teaching. Now, you might recall that I believe it was Sharat Maharaj, Swami Sharadanda, he said that even one teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, one line, volumes and volumes of philosophy could be written, right? Some of you may recall that he had said that. So, unfortunately, what often happens with all of us, we see like these great quotes, like "You can do anything and everything." So long I live, as long I live, so long I learn. But we leave it right there. We may use it in a talk. It might be a temporary inspiration. Um, I remember I know somebody that those Tastek Vivekananda, that small book. I don't know if you've seen that. So someone used to take that book, and before going to court, he would keep that book in his pocket and look at it occasionally. So the thought came that how can we develop these things more? And actually, I got the idea for this talk from one professor of Stanford University. This is the book I'm holding up. It's called Mindset. Her name is Dr. Carol Dweck, and she wrote this book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. She wrote this book in 2007. Since then, a whole movement has been come up with this book. They try to implement this in many school districts across America, across Europe. And it's really a fascinating theory. So in the first part of this talk, I'm going to talk about the principles which she discusses, Dr. Carol Dweck, of mindset. What the main principles are, how she supported that we implement them. After that, what the criticisms were of her theory. What the criticisms were. The third part, how Sri Ramakrishna, how he provides actually the ideal growth mindset, both as a student as well as a teacher. And the fourth aspect, how he manifested that in his life. Maybe we can have another talk on our practical application about this. But there's a lot of ideas and a lot of things to unpack. So starting with this book by Dr. Carol Dweck, actually this is something that's very intrinsic and personal for me, that the concept of what she talked about and what Thakur talked about, so long I live, as long I live, so long I learn. Because I think that she talks about this. One of the first principles she talks about in her books is that there are two types of mindsets that people are born with. One is what? The fixed mindset. And the other, the growth mindset. So, what is the fixed mindset? The fixed mindset believes that intelligence is a fixed quantity, and it's not something that I can develop. Whatever I am, whatever I'm born with, that's what I am. So if I'm born smart, I'm smart. If I'm born not smart, I'll be that for the rest of my life. So you could be either smart or dumb, it doesn't matter, but you could still have a fixed mindset. So to bring it at a more practical level, I remember when I was growing up taking examinations, and I think this happens with many people, we're actually more focused on the grade when we take an examination. Okay, did I get the highest marks? Did I get an A? It doesn't matter how much I learned, but if I got a good mark, okay, that's good. That's all that really matters. It doesn't matter what I learned from the thing. So we're just always focused on the grade, the achievement. And through that, we're seeking validation. In contrast to that is something called the growth mindset. That whatever my intelligence is right now, it does not matter. It can be developed and cultivated. So do you understand the contrast between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset? The growth fixed mindset is that whatever I know, this is it. This is where knowledge ends. But for people with the growth mindset, whatever I know right now, this is just the beginning. So on this concept, I want everyone to ask themselves that, what do we have? Do we have it's not so clear either. And she makes this point very clear in the book. It's not that it's black and white. Okay, he has a fixed mindset, she has a growth mindset. No, we're all combinations of both fixed and growth mindset, right? And in some areas, maybe in studies, I might have a growth mindset. I want to learn so many things. But maybe when it comes to cooking, maybe I have a fixed mindset, right? So this is the whole thing. So that's one thing she talked about. Then another thing she talked about is that what are the requirements? So people are born with a fixed mindset and growth mindset. So they did many studies. They did many studies across different schools, thousands of studies they did. Dr. Carol Drake, I think for like about 30 years she's been doing studies. And what they found is that people with a growth mindset, they performed much better on examinations and more importantly in life. They had less stress, they performed much better, those that had a growth mindset. And those that had a fixed mindset, they were much more prone to stress. And they were much more prone to depression. And they did not, on the whole, perform as well. Now, it's interesting, she also acknowledges that you can have people with a fixed mindset that want to prove that they're better than everybody. They spend their whole life trying to show I'm better than you, right? That's the ultimate, that's the epitome of a fixed mindset. It's a competitive mindset. It's based on rajas. I want to show that I'm better than you. I want to show that I'm better than others. It's based on competition. So now, the third principle that she talked about is that, yes, we're either born with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. That's true. I wouldn't say born, I say we have an inclination, especially when it comes to studies and things like that, or learning. But what she found, and if that were the case, then why did she write this book, right? Just to tell us that some people have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. What does that do? No, what she found is that through intervention, it's called growth mindset interventions, you can actually help a person who is born with a false fixed mindset to cultivate a growth mindset. Okay? So, what does that require? One of the requirements she says is it requires accurate self-assessment. Being able to to understand to know where I stand, right? To be able to accept my strengths and weaknesses without bias. Now, sometimes, how many of you here have heard the concept in Buddhism, beginner's mind? Some of you raise your hand. Have you heard the concept of beginner's mind? Okay, beginner's mind is that when you go into anything, you go in there that you don't know anything at all. And so you're giving, what that means is you're coming in with an attitude of humility. It's a concept that's very well known in Buddhism, beginner's mind, right? It's the opposite of the fixed mindset, I know. Some people say, I know. Oh, yes, I know. I have in Kolkata, my cousin, my sister has a young child. She has like tremendous self-confidence, but when you talk to her about anything, she's like a bacha, like 5 years old. She'll say, I know, any subject. So that's good on one side, but at the same time, it shouldn't, saying I know should not stop there, because the moment you say I know, you stop pursuing and you stop seeking, right? So how to keep seeking? And also, what are we seeking? Now, this concept of self-assessment is a very, it seems like it's obvious, but it's not really obvious. It's actually hard. It's, in Bangla, there's one word in the Advaita which Sri Ramakrishna uses 10 times. He calls it shorol. Shorol means in Bangla like guileless. And he uses it as almost like a prerequisite for spiritual life, for a spiritual aspirant. So shorola also means the concept of simplicity and also just knowing what one is, even at the empirical level, not at the higher level, but even at the empirical level. When you know that, what's the benefit of that? If I know my strength, I know my weaknesses, then what happens? I can respect the knowledge that I know. When you respect the knowledge that you already know, that strengthens it. And at the same time, I now know what I don't know. And I can put my entire energy. Swami talked about that in Raja Yoga, right? That if you want to make progress in anything, focus on the beans. Focus on the beans means what? On that one particular, one concept at a time, one step at a time. So the way Dr. Dweck describes it, hello? Okay. So the way Dr. Dweck describes it is that, say that somebody's taking a class in algebra, for example. Okay. So, someone's having, everybody please turn off their microphone. Somebody's, we can hear them in the background. Okay. I think it's Gita Mal. I think we found. Okay, please Gita.
Gitaji, please mute yourself.
Okay. Okay. So anyways, so does everybody understand that concept? Respecting the knowledge we already know. It's not exactly like a beginner's mind. I know nothing. No, you have to also respecting the knowledge you already know. That gives. I think it's Gita Mal. Okay, very good. Okay. So I think if we can respect the knowledge that we already know, that gives a foundation for us to learn. Does anybody have any questions on that? It's a very subtle point. Okay, let's continue then. Then another concept that she talked about is the goal of knowledge should be intrinsic. In Bangla, Sri Ramakrishna uses one word, antarik. Antarik means from inside, intrinsic. Can anybody here, I just don't want us to be a pure class. Can anybody give me a definition of intrinsic? Just off the top of your head, if you have some idea.
Within.
Okay, within, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
So intrinsic is something which is natural to you and it's inside. It's not something that comes from outside necessarily.
Okay, so when I said knowledge for intrinsic sake, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Knowledge that changes your intrinsic way of thinking.
Okay.
It becomes your nature.
Okay, very good. It becomes your nature. And it's also in line, there's an integrity about it with our goal, right? It's something that leads to, actually, intrinsic means that it's knowledge not for this, or it's acquiring knowledge or engaging in an activity not for the sake of validation. And also not for the sake of what they say, the fixed mindset, I want to prove myself, I want to prove my intelligence to you. So Dweck nicely says, why should I spend time trying to prove I'm intelligent when I can
More
actually...
actually, more actually, excuse me for interruption.
Yes.
It can be said otherwise. That is the goal of knowledge should be intrinsic. That means goal of knowledge is self development. We can say otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that there's many definitions to it. But the main thing is this: in Bangla, one word, antarik in Bengali, that it's coming from within, and it's something that's
Okay.
it's aligned with our goal towards self-development. And as
Okay,
spiritual
thank you.
aspirants, it's there should be some integrity between the knowledge that we acquire and our ultimate goal, which is to know ourself, right?
Maharaj,
That's
can I say something?
Sure.
Ma has told once that it is the antastha and not the mukhastha. Antastha means from the inside of our heart it has come. It is not that we have read it or prepared it for some things.
Right,
So
right,
it
exactly.
can be antastha.
And right, exactly, very good. Okay, so let me continue now. So that's good. We'll now go past that topic. But just going on that, so you see how this works in our education system in India, whereas even till now everything is based on this what Miss Kalpana Sarkar said, mukusto, which means memorization, right? So what does that actually do? It's not only in India, it's in America, it's everywhere. Having that concept of where the grade is the ultimate ends, that leads to corruption, that leads to cheating, that leads to bribery, right? But if the goal is actually acquisition of knowledge, and what Dr. Dweck is saying is that if we have that attitude, that knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and learning the concept in front of us and then moving to the next concept, you actually even perform better in the worldly sense as well. It's not just some idealistic or altruistic motive. It actually, they've shown again and again through thousands of empirical studies, it does have real life results, and it does make us better students. Okay? Swamiji talked about that too. In even a more, if you one who knows themselves to be the spirit, whatever they are, if they're a fisherman, they will be a better fisherman. If they're a lawyer, they will be a better lawyer. If they're a doctor, they will be a better doctor. Okay? It's that so that concept of learning knowledge for the sake of knowledge, intrinsicness. Again, Sri Ramakrishna, I was looking at this, that I was reading the Gospel, the Kautamri the other day, and it said in one place that Tarak, who later became Swami Shivananda, he was learning to sing. And at that time, Tarak was always like practicing on a heavy sadhana. So he was always like looking down below. And so he was very engaged in intense sadhana. But at that time, I think Ramchandra Chakraborty told Sri Ramakrishna he's learning to sing. Then Sri Ramakrishna told him, well, then if he learns to sing too much, then that means he won't keep his eyes down anymore. What he was trying to say is that we have one mind. So which direction do you want to give to it, right? Our time is limited. Our energy is limited. Our resources are limited. So we don't have much time. So Ma used to say, which direction do you want to, Ishwar dike, not Jagat dike. You want to give it towards God, not towards the world. So this is another, the importance of intrinsic knowledge. Now, what did Dweck say? Well, Dr. Dweck, what did she say? How did she made some nice points, and but she also said something else. The parents, teachers, coaches, they also have to support this growth mindset. And what did she mean by that? One technique she said was, rather than praising the students, like say that you have a child, if he gets a high grade, rather than saying, oh, you got an A on your examination, you're so smart. What is that? Is that a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Will that contribute to a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Jana, why don't you answer that, Attorney General?
Sir, please repeat the question.
Yeah, the example that a child gets a high grade and the parent praises the child that, oh, you got that high grade, so you are very smart, you're very intelligent. Is that type of praise, does that lead to a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Okay, she's
Fixed
muted.
mindset.
Right.
Fixed mindset.
Right. It leads to a fixed. Right.
Attorney
fixed mindset.
General, please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hello? Sorry?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think I would agree about it becoming a fixed mindset, because even though if it's encouraging, it would make the child a bit too much overconfident in a sense, I think. So probably that would be along those lines.
Okay, that's one thing, but more importantly, and Dr. Dweck mentions this, is a really subtle point. If you say that to a child that you're smart because you got a high grade, what is the child also thinking? If I got a bad grade, what does that mean? That means I'm dumb, right? So we do these kind of comments to children from an early age. I even experienced that. I'll just give a personal example. I remember that it's very pervasive in our society and our education. I remember when I was in law school, before joining, I was in law school. So I remember that the first day criminal law was there. And I remember there were like 300 students in the classroom. And I remember that the professor was saying, and none of us wanted to raise our hands because we didn't want to look dumb, right? We didn't want, and that's what happens. A fixed mindset, we want to keep showing that we're smart, but we don't want to ask questions. We don't want to actually grow because that means exposing ourselves. Okay? So these are the problems that she talked about. So she said one thing is that the student, the teacher, they should not praise. They should praise for effort. Oh, you did that. You must have worked really hard. This type of technique they talked about. But then, everybody, like all of us, we like these ideas. So that they started implementing these in the classrooms everywhere. And then what had happened? Then what happened was that feedback started to come. And what she found out is that actually the problem is that what she learned is that unless the teachers, the parents, and the students, unless they are actually able to live this mindset, it's just not a matter of the student will need help, right? To have a growth mindset, the student also needs the support of the environment. The student needs the support of the teacher. The student needs the support of the parent. It's not something that in Bangla we say mukh theke noy, antrik theke. It's not something that comes from our mouth. It has to be something that's coming from within, that the parent and the teacher is actually living. So what they found is that the parents and the teachers, they would, rather than trying to live the growth mindset, they would start to blame the student. Oh, you're not achieving good grades because you're having a fixed mindset. You understand? So these terms, fixed mindset and growth mindset, they become like punchlines, like in anything else. So this is one thing that she learned. So she ultimately, many years later, she came to the conclusion that it's not so simple that all of us, when she first started, she felt that, okay, some people have a growth mindset, some people have a fixed mindset. And our goal is to cultivate a growth mindset. But no, cultivating a growth mindset is a lifelong journey. That's what her ultimate conclusion was. Okay? Now, so these were some of the criticisms people were saying. So many people that tried to implement her theories said that, we're not getting the same results that you got. So what's the problem? We're trying to implement it. But again, the problem is that society works against it, right? From the very beginning, society is teaching us that we have to show ourselves. We have to prove ourselves, right? So that's part of the problem. So to work against that current. So now, with that being said, I'm also going to add a couple of other things that I feel she did not mention. And one of them is that the growth mindset, if you keep saying that I can learn anything, it's true you can learn anything. But ultimately what that would mean is that you're nibbling here, nibbling there, right? That they even sometimes find that people with a fixed mindset, they sometimes, in some areas, they do better because they have one goal. They're not focused on too many things. They have one goal. Even though it's narrow, but still they have one goal and they're pursuing that. So I also felt that she did not actually, you have to bring some type of ethical discipline into it too. The parents need to be role models. The teachers, the child needs to have role models if they don't have that intrinsic growth mindset. And unfortunately, many times that's not there. And she also does not talk about what we talk about in our Yoga Sutras, the necessity to build up the powers of the mind, build up the discipline of the mind. I think that's one thing that living in Bellarmont that we see, and I know Maharaj could also attest to it too, that living here as a monk, you see the value of discipline, you see the value of keeping time, you see why Swami Vivekananda was very insistent upon utilizing every minute and having a strict routine, but at the same time being dynamic within that routine. So these things were started by Swamiji. So she doesn't talk about that so much. Otherwise, what can happen? You can just have a growth mindset. Okay, let me try. I can learn anything, right? And so we're too liberal, but we kind of just keep floating on the surface. So that's not the only purpose of a growth mindset, to float on the surface. So what I'd like to talk about now is that with Sri Ramakrishna, how he was actually, if Dr. Dweck knew about him, he would have been the perfect role model as a growth mindset, both as a student as well as a teacher. Okay? And why do I say that? I think that number one, that when he grew up, and in doing this, I did some research in the great master, the Lila Prasanga. So it talked about Sri Ramakrishna growing up. And it mentions that from his early days, let me take you back to, remember last week or 2 weeks ago, I showed you Dakshineshwar, the place where Kamarpukur. We started in Kamarpukur, where Sri Ramakrishna had grown up. So in that small hut he was born, it said that his father used to notice that Sri Ramakrishna used to have a very good memory. And he had a keen observation power. So whatever was presented to him, he could immediately grasp it, right? So he employed this, it said that he could memorize so many stories in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. And at the same time he was indifferent to other subjects like mathematics, right? But what's interesting is, when seeing that he was indifferent to mathematics, his parents, they were perfect models. Khudiram and Chandra Devi Moni, I would argue that if you look at their lives, they were perfect models of the growth mindset. Okay? I think some of you know about Sri Ramakrishna's father. He was very based in truth, very orthodox, very based in truth. Orthodox, but also at the same time udar, very broad-minded as well. And same thing, his mother was so simple that she couldn't keep anything inside. And so looking at having them as role models, one thing that Sri Ramakrishna was able to, whether he had it or not, maybe he reinforced it, this concept, which is, I believe, an important concept for the growth mindset, which Dweck does not mention. That is the concept of viveka. The concept to be able to what? Discriminate. Right? We sometimes think of discrimination in terms of nitya anitya viveka, nitya anitya, right? Between the unreal and the real. But there's another type of viveka. And actually, this Viveka, Sri Ramakrishna, he cultivated this through the influence and through the role model of his parents. And he also later on imparted it to others, Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, his disciples, Master Mahasaya. We call it Sadbuddhi, okay? And it has many aspects to it. But one of the most important things to it was that it's based in this quality of ethics. And I'll just read to you what Khudiram, Sri Ramakrishna's father, what he noticed about Sri Ramakrishna. He noticed sometimes that there was a willfulness about him. There was a willfulness that sometimes he would not do what he was told. So especially in the Indian context, they look at, the child should be obedient. So sometimes they saw that he would not always do what he was told. So Khudiram, she saw that quality, but he said this about Sri Ramakrishna. He noticed that Galadhara, which was Sri Ramakrishna's nickname, he would not rest till he accomplished what he had set out to do. Would never try to hide anything he had done by telling a lie, and above all, would not harm anybody. So this is actually, in our Vedanta, we talk about sadhana chatushtaya. In our yoga philosophy, we talk about yama niyama. Anywhere in Christianity, we talk about the 10 Commandments, right? Based in ethics, right? So it's not only for spiritual life, but even any philosophy of education. This is what Dweck did not mention, I feel. To be based in ethics. It has to be based in an ethical discipline. Now, there's another quality also that Sri Ramakrishna had, which is probably it's the fundamental of the growth mindset. And it's this quality that would actually worry Sri Ramakrishna's father. It's mentioned in the Great Master. Khudiram, Sri Ramakrishna's father, noticed that when young Sri Ramakrishna was asked or forbidden to do anything, he would deliberately go counter to the instruction till it was put to him in a way that appealed to his heart and understanding. Khudiram understood that this really showed the boy's desire to know the why and wherefore of everything. Does everybody understand the significance? We talked before about this Antaric, right? The concept of intrinsic education. So you can say to know the what, the why. You know who else was like that? Young Narendra Datta. He also had that same quality. So what does that mean? They don't care if you scold them. They stand on that truth. They want to know the why and wherefore. So let me give one example of that in Sri Ramakrishna's life. In Kamarpukur, there is this, and maybe later on I'll show you, there's a water tank. There's like a small pond next to where he grew up. And there he would take bath every day. Now in this pond, there's like a place where men take bath, and there's another place where women take bath and wash their clothes, okay? So what Sri Ramakrishna with his young friends, what they sometimes would do, they were very young and innocent. That concept of sex distinction had not entered their minds. Who's a woman, who's a man? They're very young. So where the women would wash their clothes, they would go there and make much fun, make much noise, okay? And they would make so much noise that the elderly women that were there, they would get disturbed. So they would get annoyed by Sri Ramakrishna and his friends. So one of the elderly women there, she told young Sri Ramakrishna, he was maybe about 6 or 7 years old, that why don't you go to the men's ghat? Why do you come here? You're disturbing us. Moreover, then she threatened him. She said, moreover, women take bath here. Elderly women take bath and they undress here. So if you watch them undress, something bad will happen to you. So then Sri Ramakrishna, he's an innocent boy. Why will something bad? What do you mean something bad will happen to me? Explain that. but she did not explain it. She just scolded him. So Sri Ramakrishna's other friends, they became very afraid. They're afraid in case lest that these ladies go and complain to their parents. But Sri Ramakrishna, one aspect of an incarnation, abhaya, fearless. Abhaya means fearless in Sanskrit. Abhaya, fearless. And he was like that from the very beginning. So he listened to the scolding, but he was not convinced. So again, Sri Ramakrishna, he won't stop. If you tell him to stop doing anything, he won't stop unless he's convinced. So what he did the next 2 or 3 days, he stood from a distance and still watched the elderly ladies take bath, undress, everything. And after 3 days, he went back and told that elderly lady who had scolded him, "See, I watched you for 2 or 3 days, nothing happened to me." Then they told Chandramani Devi, Sri Ramakrishna's mother. Now see what that lady, when she talked to Sri Ramakrishna, she scolded him. She did not try to answer the question. That's a fixed mindset, right? But Chandramani Devi, what did she do instead? I'll just read her language. She said, "It is true that if you see women get undressed, nothing bad will happen to you." And but the women will feel insulted. They are no different from me. If you insult them, then you will also be insulting me. What a powerful argument, right? Simple villager. But that concept of when you're sure, if you have these fundamental qualities, then this growth mindset just automatically oozes out of you. So this was the kind of mother that Sri Ramakrishna had. So then she continued, so you should not do anything in the future that will hurt the sense of women. So Sri Ramakrishna, he took that to heart, and later on, as many of you know, he saw that embodiment of the Divine Mother in all women. So the concept of the importance of parents in one's life. Same thing with Khudiram. After Khudiram, Sri Ramakrishna's passing, the family was in very poor circumstances. So his eldest brother Ram Kumar, they were asking Sri Ramakrishna to learn. They were Brahmins, so to learn the scriptures and to try to do the job of priest, to try to earn like a worldly living, so he can contribute to the family. But see, Sri Ramakrishna's keen insight, and this keen insight came because he had a father who was a very ethical person and the embodiment of the growth mindset. So I'm just going to read to you what it says. When young Godadhar, that is another name for Sri Ramakrishna, when he saw the longing of learned scholars for worldly enjoyment and wealth, he became averse to acquiring knowledge like them. For his keen insight made him first ascertain the motives underlying all actions, and then judge their value by the standard of his father's good qualities, like detachment from the world, devotion to God, truthfulness, righteous conduct. That comparison revealed that the goal of most people was entirely different from that of his father. So you see that sense of discrimination, and that's where what Dweck later on understood, that Sri Ramakrishna was very fortunate, even though he's an incarnation and born like that, but he was fortunate to have such parents that reinforced that concept of discrimination. You understand, it's not discrimination towards the highest, but even in an ethical sense, giving you that sat-buddhi, how to act and how to behave. Continuing that, another aspect of Sri Ramakrishna as a growth mindset in his days in Kamarpukur is that, he had really only one passion, and that was to know God and love God in all his different aspects, right? That was his one passion in life. See, to do that, and this is one thing that Dr. Dweck talks about, when learning a subject, helping the student to cultivate a strategy that's best for them. So there's one concept in Sanskrit, swabhava. That means one's own tendencies, one's own nature. So Sri Ramakrishna didn't just, if you see what normally Brahmin kids will do, they'll go to school, they'll sit down, they'll learn the scriptures from a Pandit, and they'll just, then afterwards they'll like memorize, they'll repeat what they learned, kind of like what Miss Kalpana Sarkar said, memorization. But no, Sri Ramakrishna did not do that at all. In fact, he could read, but his main knowledge came, he would attend plays, yatras, he would use his artistic ability to make images of dolls. He would engage his friends in talks about God. He would go attend plays, and then afterwards he would go to the mango groves, and we'll show you actually where he did this later on. He would show them, he would reenact the play word for word. He had that keen, they call it Shruti Dhara. Shruti Dhara means hearing something once, you get it, you grasp it. In fact, I would argue that Sri Ramakrishna, as a growth mindset student, he employed a threefold technique, which is actually an ancient Vedic way of learning. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. He did this even as a child. How did he do that? So say that he hears, we've already said that Sri Ramakrishna was Shruti Dhara. He had keen observation powers. So Shravana is receiving the information without bias. Even in Vedic teaching, actually in ancient Vedic culture, this was how students were taught. The teacher gives a lesson, and the teacher gives a lesson, and the students must do what? They must repeat the lesson verbatim. What has the teacher said? What is that concept called? Shravana. So somebody had mentioned Mukusto. Okay, that's okay, but that's only the first part of it. And what education does, our modern education, it only rewards Shravana. But there's the second concept. And what is that? Manana. What does manana mean? Mental cogitation. Thinking over, okay, I received the information, but do I get it? Intellectually, do I get it? Is it, do I understand its concepts at the intellectual level? And if not, let me get clarification. That's manana. Then the third aspect, nididhyasana. So in Bangla, one word is there, mane hajam korte hobe. Hajam means my digestion power, making it my own. So I received the information without bias. So Sri Ramakrishna had very keen, his senses, even though you could say that his mind went beyond the senses, but when he applied his mind to the senses, they were the sharpest of all, right? His sense of watching, smell, nose, taste, everything was very sharp. So his power of Shravana was very great. Concept of manana then, he used to call it coagitate. And nididhyasana, if it's relevant, then let me make it my own. So this is what he would do. So first, as a growth mindset student, he wanted to learn about how to love God, but just not from pandits. So he would go spend time with sadhus. He would go spend time at plays. He would go spend time with his friends, always talking about God again and again, right? That's Shravana, Manana. That Manana helped, that's that sense of Viveka that he also got with help from his parents. That's the Manana. Nididhyasana. Okay, he received this information. Now what to do with it? So for him, Nididhyasana means, in spiritual concepts, anubhava, experience. Mukteke noy, not just speaking about God. Antarikteke, making that your own. So that was the concept of his sadhana. You can see from a very young age, he used to go into the mango groves. He would spend lots of time by himself in sadhana from a very young age. That's this concept of nididhyasana. Okay, that was Sri Ramakrishna as a growth mindset student during the early days. Again, I'm talking about that from 1836 to 1852. We talked about that last time. The time he spent in Kamarpukur, that was the first stage of his life, 1836 to 1852. Remember that last talk we had? Then he came to Kolkata in the beginning of 1853. Now, the second part where he acted as a growth mindset student, 1855 to 1859. Now, during that time, see, it's really interesting if you see his life. He had a growth mindset, if anybody did, towards spirituality, towards religion, towards God, right? He already had so many experiences from the age of 5. He already had so many experiences. But when he went to what was it? When he went to Kamarpukur, in I think August or September of 1855, his elder brother Ram Kumar was becoming older, and his health was not so good. So Sri Ramakrishna, his brother asked him to take over to learn the Chandi and to take initiation in the worship of the mother. So this was one of Sri Ramakrishna's first gurus. His name was Kenaram Bhattacharya. Okay? That was one of he got the Shakti mantra from him, the Shakti mantra, in anticipation of doing the Divine Mother worship. So you see, some of us, if we have any type of small, even say a dream or anything, we become very puffed up, right? We think that, oh, okay, I know everything. But that was not Sri Ramakrishna. He always had that learner's attitude, right? He always, Javat Bachi Tavat Shiki. So after that, he was then on his own. From the years of 1856 to 1859, he was doing intense sadhana. I think at that time he experienced that, he experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sarvikalpa Samadhi. I think I showed you 2 weeks ago, he used to go, he had such intense Vyakulata, or yearning for God, that he used to rub his face against the mud, right? Because he could not see the Divine Mother. And then I think I showed that, we discussed that last time, he went in front of the Divine Mother, and he saw Mother in all of her glory, in both the Nirvikalpa aspect as well as the Sarvikalpa aspect. Both aspects he saw. So after all these spiritual experiences from 1855 to 1859, then something happened. I think it was in 1860 or 1861. Rani Rashmani passed away. She passed away. And when she passed away, something interesting happened. Before she had passed away, Dakshineshwar was more known as a place of hospitality. You can come stay for 2 or 3 days. Pilgrims can come and stay for 2 or 3 days, and they can take rest there. Then go on their way to Puri or wherever. But after Rani Rashmani passed away, Sri Ramakrishna desired that sadhakas of all denominations, sincere sadhakas, should be able to come, stay there for months, years if they wanted to, and not have to worry about food or shelter or anything like that. Those bare necessities would be provided. So, because Mathur Babu, he was under the spell of Sri Ramakrishna, so after Rani Rashmani's passing away, you'll see an influx of great teachers, great spiritual personalities that came to Sri Ramakrishna from 1861 up to the end of his life. And especially during those years of 1861 to 1865, who was the first person that came? Bhairavi Brahmani. When Sri Ramakrishna saw her, what is there to learn? He's already experienced all the highest states, right? So normally, in fact, it's said in the Leela Prashanka, the great master, his own mind had become his own guru. He had even that vision of the Papa Purusha, the culmination of all his sins, and he had a vision where he saw himself in 2 senses. One, the embodiment of his sin, and then another concept of he as another figure of him as a sannyasi with a trident that destroyed that Papa Purusha, that sense of avidya. So his mind was perfectly pure. He dwelt in that nirvikalpa state and could come down to the sarvikalpa state. So what is there to learn from anybody? But you see, no. Javat Vachi, Tavat Piki. So Bhairavi Brahmani came to him. So he had all these experiences, but he still wasn't sure. Are these my own hallucinations, or are they? Can they be confirmed by the scriptures? So Bhairavi Brahmani was his first teacher. So in fact, she came there to meet him, and I think we'll talk about that later. I don't want to go too much into it, but anyways, through her, he practiced the 64 tantric disciplines. He experienced the Divine Mother in all different ways, and at the same time, he remained true to his own self. There's one tantric discipline, virya, which means that to engaging in it's called in relations with a partner, with a lady. But Sri Ramakrishna was a brahmacharya to the end, so he did not do that. Okay, so he also catered it to his own. He was true to his own temperament, but he practiced all the 64 disciplines. Okay, that was Bhairavi Brahmani. Then after that, this Jatadhari came, and he taught Sri Ramakrishna how to have this bhakti towards Rama. He even gave him that small image of Ram, and he practiced these different Vaishnava disciplines, Shanta, Dasya, Vatsalya. We'll talk about that later on. These different types of relationships that we can have with God. Okay, so he practiced those with him. In spite of all that, then Totapuri came, right? Totapuri, the sannyasi. So seeing a fitted person like Sri Ramakrishna, he wanted to give him sannyasa in the Advaitic tradition. Now Bhairavi Brahmani did not want this. No, you're a bhakta. You don't do this. This will ruin your devotion towards the Divine Mother. But again, that's a fixed mindset, right? Sri Ramakrishna's concept of Brahman, Satyamananta Brahman. It's true and it's infinite. How can you limit it to just one name, one form, or even form itself? So, many of you know he took sannyasa. He received initiation from Totapuri. See, what would even, I'm not making comparisons, I don't want to be fanatical, but even we see that great religious prophets, what do? They have a single experience, a single vision, and they have faith in that, right? And that becomes the only way to reach God. That one aghe, in Bangla we say aghe, one way. That becomes the only way. But you see that Sri Ramakrishna's mind, what is the ultimate result of the growth mindset? This udar, it's in Bangla udar means breadth, wide. Swami Raghunathanji used to say that a spiritual aspirant's mind should be broad as the sky. And at the same time, Bangla one word is gobhir, deep as the ocean. And these, I just to give you two different periods of Sri Ramakrishna's life where he was an ideal, he was the ideal growth mindset student. If we have another talk, we can talk about how he was the ideal as a growth mindset teacher. I think it's 3:59 right now, so I think we can.
We would love to have hear you on this later. We'll invite you also. We will be very inclined.
So now I welcome questions because we've covered a lot of topics here, and I think that again I say this again and again. If one thing we can do out of any lectures that we hear, because we've all invested time and energy right now, and I wrote about this in some articles. Even the same, I wrote about this concept in Vedanta Keshari about the pilgrimage mindset. That when you go for Twitter pilgrimage, preparing yourself ahead of time. Then you have a pilgrimage. Then afterwards, revising what you've learned. So this is the concept Sri Ramakrishna talked about and what he practiced. And not only what he practiced, but what he imparted to his disciples, what he imparted to the Holy Mother. What were these three-part steps we talked about? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So even the simple concepts today, what did Maharaj say? Secondly, okay, he said that, I get that. Does it make sense? Some parts of it make sense, some parts of it don't. Which parts don't make sense? Then the third part, is there any nididhyasana? Is there any part of that that I can use and now begin to incorporate in my own life? So that's the idea we're going to get. So we'll be happy to take questions now or any types of discussions.
You are welcome to ask question. So let us be a little brief. Can we start with Mr. Stephen?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen?
Well, Jana, pardon me,
Okay.
Attorney General she had a question. If she can.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Maharaj. Actually, it's not a question, but again, another insight. It was interesting. Earlier, you mentioned about Sri Ramakrishna having, just by listening once, he was able to memorize. And then it reminded me of the anecdotes I repeatedly hear about Swami Vivekananda borrowing books, and just the librarian was like, "Are you even reading that?" And then he was asked, "Yeah, go ask," and then he can even cite the pages. So it's like the growth mindset in him is a bit like the power of concentration, his focus. It's the, as you said earlier, you were asking about what intrinsic meant, and I was trying to speak, but yeah, again I'm muted. But I think it's something innate and how do you say it? Very interested in knowledge, in learning, that they want to grow, and by that they have to have this certain kind of focus and concentration to be successful in their endeavors. And so another second thing, just quickly. You mentioned about law school, and yeah, I kind of read your background, and you're also a lawyer before you went into the monastic life. I flunked the bar twice, but before that, I was conditioned that because growing up I've had good grades, the kind of the fixed mindset. You're good. Those things. You got that praises all throughout your life, and then you suddenly experience failure, and with that you can't accept it, and with that, as you mentioned, that's why I was smiling a lot. You mentioned about depression, and it's like people conditioned you to a certain kind of direction, and when you're not able to commit, or you're not able to meet that expectation, you're starting to lose your self-confidence, and good enough. I was able to overcome it, but yeah, that your thing about the criminal, it just reminded me of that event in my life. So yeah, that's just about it. So
Well,
thank you, Maharaj.
before we go, I'll just give you my own personal anecdote too. That yes, even when I went to law school in Colorado, and I was to take the California bar examination, which is probably the toughest examination in America. Bar examination is 3 days. Normally the bar exam is 2 days. So I remember the first day that I went, the first time I was going to take it. At that time, there were so many people there, and really, I could even say for myself at that time, like that pressure was like such a pressure cooker that I couldn't even sit at that time, and I had to step away from it. And so I remember that's why I like these ideas so much, that I just stepped away entirely from everything. And I just remember that, what Swamiji said, you can do anything and everything. But that Shraddha, Swamiji says in the Kathopanishad, that you have to find that Shraddha within yourself. Nobody can give that to you, right? No teacher can give that to you. That's something that you have to, that this antarik knowledge, that knowledge has to come from within ourselves. Right. So I'm just adding that, I remember one day I was, and that one day that after long that came. Then I knew that, okay, then I could enjoy the preparation. You understand? Because then the knowledge becomes that what I'm learning now is not just for the sake of passing the bar. I'm learning these 17 different subjects. They're going to help me as a lawyer. I'm going to know each of these subjects so well. So afterwards, at first I didn't even want to take the exam. After actually, whatever they can ask, I want something even more I was thinking of even more difficult questions. So, anyways, I appreciate that, and that's great. You went through that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Attorney Jana. Stephen, do you have anything to say or any observation to make?
Okay, Maharaj, I'd like to ask, in your quest for to have a growth mindset in spirituality, do you have like a checklist or a yardstick that you are sticking to the growth mindset and not becoming fixed in your ideas?
Well, you know that. I'm not. Can you repeat that? Do you have yardstick means what?
Is there a way to have some kind of a checklist to know that personally you are pursuing a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset?
Okay, so I think that you see the thing in our tradition that, and I think this is a little bit different than say Semitic traditions, Christian tradition, Islam tradition. That is Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna. They give us lots of freedom to figure out our own way. They give like principles, but they give that freedom for us to work it out in our own way. One example of that is that. Okay, we'll get into that next time if we give a talk. But anyway, so I think when you're talking about checklist, the checklist, and Dr. Dweck mentioned this, is that the checklist begins is if I want to learn something, where am I at with respect to that particular subject? How much do I know and what I don't know? What you talk about, accurate self-assessment, without bias, without the projection of the ego, right? What the ego always trips us up when we're trying to do accurate self-assessment. It's not so easy, right? The ego somehow, the Sri Ramakrishna says that the shala aham, that ego somehow slips in and distorts everything. So somehow if we could keep that to the side and get, okay, so this is where I'm at. And it's okay to be there. That's self-acceptance, accurate self-assessment. Then we can what do I have to learn? Right? Then the next concept she talked about, according to my nature, like Sri Ramakrishna, he didn't just sit with a pandit and learn about religion, right? He used to he could hear. He loved to hear. Rather, he could read, but he loved to hear. Shruti Dhara, he could hear it one time. He used to visit sadhus. He used to visit plays. He used to talk about God. He used to live with God. He made it his own. So next thing is, according to my own tendencies, how can I make this subject my own? For somebody might be sitting in front of a book and reading. Some of us, we're not like that. We get bored with that. Some of us may be watching lectures, interaction, discussion with others about a subject, with people who know about the subject, and getting feedback too. This is another aspect that she talked about, constructive feedback. A teacher and parent, that's an important role of the teacher and parent and a coach, to provide that constructive feedback. But you can really only receive that feedback if you have accurate self-assessment and if you have a growth mindset. A fixed mindset person will never be able to receive feedback because it'll be a direct frontal attack to our ego, right? The ego is very sensitive. So if you mention anything, they won't. That's why that accurate self-assessment and the growth mindset is very important. So those three aspects: accurate self-assessment, strategy. How can I learn the knowledge that's suitable with my temperament? And then getting feedback from others.
Thank you very much, Maharaji, and thank you very much, Stephen. Madam Chandra Navani, she's from Hong Kong. So, Madam Chandra Navani, do you have anything, any question to ask or any objection to make? Any observation to make? Madam Navani, are you there?
No, definitely no objection.
No. That is
But
my.
very interesting.
That's my mistake.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So basically, of course, no objections as such. But very interesting about the growth mindset and not to have a fixed mind. That's very important. Not to feel that you cannot progress and that you are stuck at where you are, but realize that there's always more and more. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, go beyond the sandalwood trees, go beyond to find the gold and the diamonds, right? So I think we should realize.
Keep going forward. Yes.
Yeah, so that's one thing I think we should pick up from this. Thank you, Swamiji.
Any other observation?
Maharaj, here is Anil Sachdev. Another question, Maharaj. Maharaj, as you pointed out that ethical values were the key aspects of the Ramakrishna and his parents. But do you think that in today's time, this is the rarest thing found in the society. So how do you think this subject can be balanced in today's circumstances or in today's environment where ethical values are least found?
Well, I don't know if it's I disagree with that last. I don't know if it's least found. I understand what you're saying, but I think that we do find good. I think that we do find the ethical people. Might not be, Swamiji objective thing, right? And it depends upon your upbringing. I think he used the example that some people in some societies they have many wives.
Or in many subjects, like the surface knowledge we should have, and then it will help us to collaboration and or interdisciplinary things.
I understood. Okay. I think that one thing, one scholar, one scholar monk in our order, he told me something nice. He's gone very deep in this. It was a great insight that I'm trying to apply. Somehow traversing between the macrocosmic and the microcosmic. Somehow alternating between both. Whether it's an article, a concept, anything that it is, we should have they call it something, they call it the forest and the trees, the microcosmic, macrocosmic. So we have to alternate between both. Does that make sense? It's a really, we have to think about it. You have to think about it a little bit. But alternating between both. So that you go into the trees knowing the details, but again, you get the holistic level. Seeing both sides of it. Please think about that. Somebody told me that, and I'm still thinking about it. But it's that he has alternation between the macrocosmic and the microcosmos, between the forest and the trees, going in and out. So you go down to the deep level, then you get again, because then you get a sense. You have to go back. If you go too much into the trees, into the details, you may lose. You may lose yourself, right? So again, you have to get back to the forest level, and we have to see where we're at. And again, go back into the details. That's my suggestion. Others may have.
Any other question? Then we will conclude today's meeting. After that, we'll have informal session of 5 minutes. So if you have got any other question, you are welcome.
It is not question, just information for those who are not in Calcutta. I have seen where Thakur has got initiated by his guru Kanai Bhattacharya. It is in Anul, and there is a amloki tree. And
amloki tree.
Yes, and Thakur has done this thing for 12 days. He was meditated under the amloki tree. That place I have seen. So I want to say that it is, and there is a temple, Anul temple, because in that area, Thakur first had the samadhi. When he saw the birds are flying in the sky, and he got that thing and got this samadhi. So it is a very holy place. So I have visited this when I'm going from Kamarpukur to that area. So maybe there's some of our friends here have not seen that place, so I am narrating it.
Very useful indeed. Thank you very much for this information, which many of us did not know.
Thank you.
Before we conclude today's formal session, we would like to profusely thank Srimat Swami Chidekanandaji Maharaj of Advaita Ashram, Kolkata. We are so grateful to him for providing us so many takeaways so far as having growth mindset is concerned. Sri Ramakrishna's concept of growth mindset, that is the concept of education, how to learn in spiritual field. And I would also like to refresh you that on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Philippine, Hong Kong, Singapore time, we will celebrate the Tithi Puja and birthday of Swami Advaitanandaji Maharaj. That is 4:00 p.m. India time. A very, very good surprise is awaiting for you. You'll have a beautiful lecture on Swami Advaitanandaji, the miracle monk, because different Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna's 16 direct disciples had different attributes. So once again, thanking all the participants and Swami Chidekanandaji Maharaj for speaking to us for the second time, and another topic on which he hinted. So we would like to invite him when it is convenient to him. So we are so grateful to him. And with his permission, we'll go for 5 minutes of informal session where people can say their pranam and also say greetings to Maharajji. And please give me 30 seconds to conclude today's program, and then I'll come back for the informal session of 5 to 7 minutes. Please grant me 30 seconds of